This is Twit.
Facebook may be interested in offering some level of anonymity on the social network. The company's met with the people behind the anonymous social app Secret to see how they can work together, according to a report on Recode. That report was based on two sources who, of course, wish to remain anonymous. Now, this whole Facebook thing is kind of interesting. I really don't personally see Facebook becoming a big proponent of anonymity online, but I think the bigger issue is the question of anonymity, and we brought in somebody who really knows about this issue and has written brilliantly about it, and that is Matthew Ingram, who's a senior writer for GigaOM. And I welcome you, Matt.
Hi, thanks for having me, Mike.
And of course, Matt is often on Twit Network as a guest. We drag him in here against his will quite often. Well, Matthew, first of all, do you think a company like Facebook would ever offer anonymity? As I said, I don't think they would, but do you think there's any chance that they would ever jump on that particular bandwagon?
I don't know about Facebook proper. I mean, the blue universe, I don't know that they'll ever do that because they've staked, their claim pretty heavily on real identity. But what I think is interesting is that it sounds like from things Mark Zuckerberg has said that they're interested in exploring pseudonymity or anonymity in other apps. So for example, Instagram, WhatsApp, maybe some of the future apps that are coming, because they've been talking about launching new ones like Paper, for example. So in those apps, it sounds like Facebook might be willing to explore not requiring you to log in with your quote unquote real identity. And so in a lot of ways, his views seem to have sort of evolved from the old days when he was very, very clear about, that famous quote about people who try to maintain multiple identities are not being truthful or.
Yeah. Now, and the old days being 2 years ago, there was a huge amount of activity a couple of years ago, especially when Google Plus came out, because the idea was that I think Facebook got scared that Google Plus would make a successful bid as the source of identity. In other words, if you have a Google Plus account, that's your identity, that's your ID card on the internet, and that could be a powerful thing for commerce, that could be a powerful thing for all kinds of uses. One of the things that they have succeeded with, and Matthew, you're aware of this as a writer, and I'm aware of it as well, which is this whole authorship thing that they have where you can tag articles that demonstrate that you're an author, and that links back to your Google Plus profile, and it says, hey, this is really the person who wrote this. And that's kind of a tiny glimpse into what's possible with identity online. Now, you mentioned pseudonymity, and just to clarify what that means, anonymity is like, okay, there's no way to know who this person really is. Pseudonymity is like, okay, it says it's Captain Fantastic, but it's actually Matthew Ingram. If I drill into the profile, I can see, oh, that's Matthew Ingram. And then I think there's another level, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think another level of pseudonymity is where Facebook would know that you're Matthew Ingram. The public would not know, and you could go by Captain Fantastic. Is that considered a form of pseudonymity when it's not knowable by the public, but it is known by the service provider? Is that pseudonymity?
It definitely is, and that's one model that you see some companies experimenting with. I know Twitter has given this a lot of thought, particularly as it applies to their verified program. So obviously, if you're verified, they've verified that you're a real person, that is your name. To me, those sort of distinctions are, it depends on what you want to do with the service. Like you said, Google's interested in real names to the extent that it can sort of verify your content and or direct ads towards you. It feels to me like a lot of those sort of miss the point. If your pseudonym or your handle or whatever you want to call it is something that you use all the time, if you have a sort of track record online, I think that accomplishes the same thing as having a verified identity in a lot of ways.
Now, Scott, you're in the public eye, and so you know the downside of anonymity, which is trolls, haters, just people who want to cause trouble. Some men just want to see the world burn, and they go in there with anonymity, and it's a powerful tool. Where do you land on supporting or rejecting anonymity?
Well, I think I'd originally found the original goals of Facebook to be just right. I think you should be, with an open profile and all that kind of stuff. But I agree with Matthew. I think that maybe some of the side apps like WhatsApp could be a way to be a little more anonymous. I think If Zuckerberg is wise in one thing, and he certainly is wise in a lot of things, he knows that this is what young people want to do. Secret proves that, and a lot of these messaging apps prove that. So I think the overall Facebook would probably stay in the real world and who you are. And yeah, Facebook wants to know who you are, no matter who else does. But I think that maybe some of those side apps might be a way to do a little bit of that, because I think that there is room for that in maybe a texting app. But you're right, in the real world, in the journalistic world, it is very important to have a real identity to get the truth. And I think, you know, Zuckerberg wants that as well.
Now, part of this story, of course, is the anonymity-based apps like Whisper and Secret. Matthew, what do you think of these? Are these a positive force for good in the world? Are they a good toy? Or are these just a nasty way for people to libel each other without, is it libel, or would it be, what's the other one? If it's one's
slander.
Slander, libel or slander. Is this just another way to hammer at people for the haters and get away with it, or is this a good trend?
Well, of course, the answer to all your questions is yes. I mean, it's all of those things. It's just like the internet in a lot of ways. Is the internet for good, or is it for evil? Does it allow people to do bad things or good things? It does all those things. And so what these apps are, to me at least, is a window into human behavior. And sometimes that's good, and lots of times it's bad. And we've seen it with things like Formspring. We've seen it with, you know, the Juicy network. We've seen it with any number. This keeps coming up over and over. We've seen it with 4chan. So, you know, when you get a glimpse into sort of unfiltered human behavior, it's not always a good thing. But I think there is a very powerful human need to be anonymous and to use that for whatever purpose, for expressing things that you would never express if they were attached to your real name. And sometimes those are good things, and many times they're not.
And of course, it has to be said that anonymity in a lot of countries is a necessity for survival if you were to speak in public. Countries that don't have freedom of speech, where you can be jailed or executed or whatever for criticizing the leadership or something like that, anonymity is a life or death thing. And organizations like the Electronic Frontier Foundation and others strongly support anonymity for that reason. It's in, you know, our first world problem is that trolls are mean, but in the rest of the world, in the larger world, anonymity is a powerful force for freedom of speech, and that has to be said. There's also some minor news this morning, which is that Secret went down this morning. Yesterday they did an update which introduced a variety of features, including anonymous invitations, so you could anonymously invite people or invite people who are anonymous. And now the thing is crashing, and Silicon Valley is freaking out. This seems to be mostly a Silicon Valley phenomenon, actually, Secret. I don't really see it catching fire in the rest of in the real world. What do you think, Matthew? Is this mostly a Silicon Valley plaything, or is this a broad, turning into a mainstream phenomenon?
I don't know about Secret itself. I don't know that will ever become mainstream, but you see it coming out in all sorts of apps. You see it in the way kids have used Instagram or WhatsApp or Snapchat, or, I mean, this is a trend, broadly speaking. Whether, you know, one app succeeds or another app succeeds, I think that's again a sort of fundamental human need. And, you know, it's not just people in sort of third world or oppressed nations. I know a lot of people responded to Zuckerberg's comment about having multiple identities being a sign of lack of integrity, and they said that's really easy to say if you're a white male rich CEO. You know, if you're anything other than those things, there's all kinds of good reasons why you might want to keep one identity separate from another, your work identity separate from your personal identity. So I think those things are things that human beings in general at some point always feel the need for.
Well, that's a great point, Matthew, and I want to thank you for coming on Tech News Today.
Great, thanks for having me.
You can find Matthew at gigohm.com and also on Twitter at MatthewWI, and Matthew is spelled with one T.